A senator condemns pro-abortion extremism on the Senate floor.
It is entirely possible that the next Democratic nominee for the highest office in our land will be publicly agnostic about the moral status of post-abortion infanticide. Morally agnostic about post-abortion infanticide. Let's be clear. These candidates are wildly and spectacularly out of the mainstream in American life.
Senator Ben Sasse called out the Democratic presidential candidates during a floor speech earlier this summer. 7 of the candidates currently serve in the U.S. Senate. Those are Senators Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Michael Bennet, all of whom voted against the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act earlier this year, which would have protected babies who survive abortions. Joining us now from Capitol Hill is Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse. Senator, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
What was your main message in the pro-life speech you recently gave on the Senate floor?
You know, everybody in America should be pro-mom and pro-science and pro-babies. I wish these two political parties were wrestling again about an ideological spectrum, about level of government intervention in the economy, but that there was room for pro-life people in both parties. I'm obviously a very conservative, pro-life Republican, but it is tragic what's happening inside the Democratic Party. This debate that they had in South Carolina a few weeks ago, sponsored by Planned Parenthood, is just a significant departure from the American political tradition. The Democratic Party is caught in the grips of the radically anti-baby, pro-abortion abortion industry, and it's just a tragic thing. And I think we need to highlight how quickly the Democratic Party is abandoning people in their coalition that used to be pro-mom and pro-baby. And I wish the Democratic Party, though it's not my party, I wish the Democratic Party again would be serious about the reality of the most voiceless victims among us.
And to that point, you are the author of the Senate's Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, which would protect babies who survive abortions. Every Democrat senator running for president voted against it. What does that, in your opinion, reveal about the Democratic Party's stance on abortion today?
Yeah, I mean, it is such a marked change over the course of the last 20 years. 20 years ago, the Democratic Party's mantra, and you even heard Hillary Clinton saying it as recently as a couple of years ago, used to be that they wanted abortion to be legal and safe, but rare. They said that abortion was a problem. They wanted it to be legal. I obviously strongly disagree with them on that, but they said that they wanted it to be rare. Now they regularly celebrate it. They have this shout your abortion nonsense, and you have the disgraced governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, talking bizarrely on the radio about the choice to decide whether or not to kill a baby after she's already been born and is struggling for life and breath on the hospital table. There's some really horrific things happening in the Democratic Party, and you saw that on the vote on my Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, where we got a handful of Democrats, but none of them that are running for president right now would have the courage to say something that is so obviously true, which is that a baby is a baby, and a baby is obviously a baby that's already been born, has dignity and deserves protections. I believe that in utero as well, but their party is just doing some really horrific stuff right now, and I think we need to shine a spotlight on it to draw attention to it so that regular folks across America can say to these candidates, where is your humanity? Where is your heart?
One of your Senate colleagues who is running for president, Kirsten Gillibrand, recently compared holding a pro-life position to racism. What is your response to that specific claim, Senator?
Yeah, it's such insane nonsense. So the First Amendment protects the rights to free speech, religion, press, assembly, and protest. And if you want to look deeply in the history of these two movements, the pro-life movement, which believes in the universal dignity of everybody who's created in God's image, regardless of your skin color, your ancestry, regardless of your sex, male or female, we believe in the pro-life movement in the universal dignity of everybody. The pro-abortion movement actually has its roots closely intertwined with eugenics. So the racist history runs exactly opposite to what Senator Gillibrand bizarrely said as she pandered to the pro-abortion industry.
And finally, what do you want your Senate colleagues running for president to know about the pro-life movement and pro-life Americans?
Well, so first of all, let's just start with the basic truth, but then I'll add something that's about politics as well. The basic truth is when you look at these babies in utero and you see these images of babies as they develop, it turns out that they're babies. They're humans, and they have lots and lots of dignity, and they have rights. And we should be talking about these babies and the God who created them and the fact that they're image bearers of a great God who gives us the blessings of birth. But in addition, at the level of politics, these folks should know how far out of the mainstream they are. It turns out that when you get one level deeper than the question, do you consider yourself more pro-life or more pro-abortion rights, where America is pretty evenly divided, but when you get one level deeper and you start asking questions about, do you, the American voter, think that there should be protections for babies who are at the age of viability? Or how do you think, which is moving from 24 to 23 to 22 to 21 weeks, some pretty amazing medical technological developments. Or when you ask questions like, where should the U.S. line up out of the 200 nations in the world about how we protect the most vulnerable among us? Right now, America has somewhere between the 4th and the 7th most liberal abortion laws out of all 200 countries on earth. We're between the 4th and the 7th most liberal. That's not where the American people want to be. Well under 30% of Americans really believe we should have as permissive a set of laws around the abortion regime as we have today, and more than 2/3 of Americans think America's laws are way too far to the left for where America actually is on this issue. So I hope that these Democratic presidential candidates will get out of their echo chambers and actually go meet some of the little old ladies that are praying outside abortion clinics in a place like Nebraska, and realize that these are people who have a deep conviction that God has called us to love the most vulnerable among us, and that's why we in the pro-life movement fight. And I think, frankly, the ways we fight are not primarily about legislation, as important as that is, but the ways we fight are primarily by coming alongside young women who might have a pregnancy that they didn't plan for and that they might be considering aborting. But it turns out when they meet people who love them and want to love their baby and support them, lots of really wonderful things happen. So the heart of the pro-life movement is strong, it's headed in the right direction, and its center isn't in Washington, D.C., it's in all the neighborhoods where your listeners actually live.
Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska, thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
Thanks for having me.
Joining us now for a reaction and analysis on more pro-life headlines is Mallory Quigley, Vice President of Communications at the Susan B. Anthony List. Mallory, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Catherine.
First off, what do you make of what Senator Sasse said about his colleagues, calling them out?
Yes, well, he's absolutely right. I mean, we have 77% of Americans supporting his legislation, the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, and not a single one of the Democrat senators who are running for president could support that legislation. And absolutely, long gone are the days of alleged safe, legal, and rare abortions. And it just shows, the way the party has moved so extreme.
And as we discussed with Senator Sasse, presidential candidate Senator Kirsten Gillibrand recently compared holding a pro-life view to that of racism.
Right.
What's your response to that?
Well, that is what we call extreme pandering. I mean, this is just pandering to the most outrageous far left base of the Democratic Party. It's actually, as you know, and our viewers probably know, it's the abortion movement whose history is steeped in racism and eugenics.
Turning now to more pro-life headlines that happened this week, the HHS department announced this week it will immediately begin implementing President Trump's Protect Life rule. Mallory, what's the significance of this?
Yes, well, this is hugely significant. So this is new regulations that are meant to draw a very bright line between abortion and family planning. The regulations don't cut a single penny for family planning, which, that's a separate issue that we could get into as Catholics, but it's about saying abortion is not healthcare and it's not family planning. So it's a huge victory that the Trump administration is going to implement the rule right away, and that's thanks to the Ninth Circuit Court, which I never thought I would say that. I mean, the Ninth Circuit is one of the most liberal pro-abortion of all the circuit courts, so it's notable that we have this court victory that while the litigation is pending, because the court hasn't yet ruled on the merits of the rule, but while litigation is pending, that the rule can go into place.
And finally, Mallory, in another major headline this week, Dr. Lena Wen announced that in a secret meeting, the Planned Parenthood Board of Directors decided to fire her.
Yes.
What's your take on this, and what is the signal to you that Planned Parenthood has separated themselves from Dr. Lena Wynn less than a year after hiring her?
Right. Well, I think one thing is clear, and that is Planned Parenthood is scrambling. They pivoted to a doctor, someone that was going to be focused on the so-called medical, approach to abortion, and that hasn't been working. They're returning now to their uber political roots, and I think that she said that there was philosophical differences. Dr. Wen thinks that legislators don't have a role to play, and here we are, more than 45 years after Roe versus Wade. The American people are crying out for justice on this issue. They want to have their voices heard, and that's why we've seen such a surge in pro-life states with state legislators implementing laws that reflected the will of the people. We are not standing for the most radical status quo that we've had of abortion on demand up until the moment of birth paid for by taxpayers. That's what Roe versus Wade has allowed. And it's very unpopular, it's wrong, and Dr. Wen didn't want to talk about it in those terms, and now we're seeing the pro-abortion lobby lose all this ground at the state level. So they're putting in someone that's more political, and I think it's clear that they are going to return to their roots as a very political organization.
We'll have to keep our eye on it, as I know that we will. Mallory Quigley, Vice President of Communications for the Susan B. Anthony List. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.